Okay, it looks like we have hit the 500 mark, and unfortunately, that's all that we have room for, unless someone drops out. So I am going to get started and try to keep an eye on folks that are trying to get in, so I could let them in. But for those of you that are here, I would ask that you please all mute your mics until you wish to speak, because believe it or not, background noise that you hear can be troublesome for the rest of us in hearing what's going on here. So if you would please do that. Good evening, everyone. I hope you and your families are doing well. I would like to start by just simply thanking you all for your cooperation during the last few months. This pandemic continues to truly challenge each of us in every way. So I do thank you for your patience as we navigate these uncharted waters. Next, I do want to mention again, just as in our last meeting, we will have some board trustees that may be joining us today. So I do want to point out they are here as observers and not to comment on behalf of the board. This is a parent meeting, a district-wide parent meeting between yourselves and myself. So I'd like to start by simply thanking everyone for your questions. We reached out for questions, and about 100 parents sent in questions for this evening's meeting. 328 total questions in all, which we consolidated into about 178 questions. So obviously, you have a lot of questions that need to be answered. We understand that, so we thank you for those. I do want to say that in tonight's presentation, I'm not going to be hitting each one of those questions, but in the presentation, I will be answering probably almost all of them. However, there will be some that I will not, and that is simply not because I don't want to answer them, but because there is more work that needs to be done in order to get those answers. I think you know that we have a preliminary plan in place, one that we've been adding to and working on throughout the summer that continues to happen, and as that happens, we continue to update our plan. So I ask you for your patience with that. But I do think this evening I will be able to answer many of your questions. And what I'd like to do is simply start off by sharing my screen and presenting. And this is going to be a little difficult because some things get hidden and I need to find them. Okay, there we go. Okay. And I let some people in the waiting room. Okay, so I'm going to get started. So as I mentioned, we do have a preliminary plan for reopening our schools. This PowerPoint you may have seen, it's similar to one I did with the board not too long ago. However, it has been updated because, as I mentioned, our plan continues to get updated and improved. So we started off with how we looked at preparing for opening our schools. It began with guidance that we've received from several states. I don't know if you know, but New York was a little late in terms of providing some comprehensive guidance to the districts in New York. And we were working off of guidance that we received from Maryland, Connecticut, and New Jersey. And we took that guidance and brought in some ideas and some thoughts and areas that we felt we need to focus on for reopening our schools. And what we did was we developed these reopening subcommittees that you see here. We had general health and safety guidelines, and that committee is a subcommittee of the board's advisory committee for health and safety. Elementary social distancing solutions committee, and that is a subcommittee of the strategic planning. Committee, the Secondary Social Distancing and Solutions Committee, and also a subcommittee of strategic planning, a Remote Teaching and Learning Committee, which is a subcommittee of teaching and learning, and then finally, Facilities Cleaning and Disinfecting Committee, and that was a subcommittee of finance and facilities. These committees did a great deal of work to provide information that went into the development of our preliminary plan. And once that happened, that information went on to the actual board advisory committees, which are made up of all district stakeholders. So the reopening subcommittees were made up of faculty and staff throughout the district. And then those recommendations, along with the preliminary draft plan, went to the board's advisory committees, which are listed at the top there: strategic planning, health and safety, teaching and learning, and finance and facilities. So we asked our committees to take a look at a few things when it came to looking at our plan. So the General Health and Safety Committee, Safety Guidelines Committee, their areas of focus was screening, PPE, response to students and staff presenting symptoms, contact tracing, transportation, and of course, students on buses. The social distancing, solutions committees for elementary and secondary, they looked at basically how can we have all students and staff in school 6 feet apart. And they looked at these three areas, the instructional areas, common areas, and where meals would be eaten. Our Facilities Cleaning and Disinfecting Committee, their area of focus was cleaning and disinfecting protocols, storage for items removed if needed, and ventilation and filtration systems. And I apologize, but we get calls all night long here at Central Office. So, and then finally, our Remote Teaching and Learning Committee. And that committee's area of review were device access, internet access, particularly the unconnected, or we call the missing and learning students, and social, emotional, and compensatory services when schools open. So each of these subcommittees were also charged with considering the following 4 reopening options, because we felt it was very important. And that first option was look at all students in school, social distancing, and in-person teaching and learning, because we all believe that school is, of course, the best place for students to be, not at home learning, but to actually be in school, in-person learning. The other items we looked at were a blending model for alternate day scheduling, a blended model with a fixed day scheduling, and then all students out of school with remote teaching and learning. So our reopening plans, with the current New York State social distancing requirements in place, the district developed a hybrid model because our committees felt we could not get all kids in school, in-person learning safely with those guidelines. So a hybrid model was developed where general education and inclusion students would spend 2 days per week in school and 3 days per week engaged in distant or remote learning. Students in special classes would be in school for in-person teaching 5 days per week. So these students we're talking about in grades K through 12 or 813 students, K through 12 life skills program students, K through 3 12-1-1 class at Vern Kritz, and grades 2 to 5 15-1 classes at Brookhaven and Frank P. Long. Also, in recognizing that many of our families are not comfortable sending their kids back to school at this time, we've developed a model for distant and remote learning only. And that's an option parents could take. Oh, let me get back there. I'm sorry. Okay. So to address the uncertainty of New York State guidelines and any future state directives, the district's plan was designed to be flexible. So it provides smooth transitions between each of the different teaching and learning settings, in school, in person, to hybrid, to distant or remote learning. The plan also allows for a phased-in approach to bring more groups of students in for additional in-person teaching days. And we can look at that down the road, number one, if space permits, and also number two, when social distancing becomes better learned with our students in school. So the reopening model, the hybrid model looks like this. Mondays and Tuesdays, student cohort MT for Monday, Tuesday. Last name beginning with A through K, in-school, in-person teaching and learning. Our special class students would be in school for in-person teaching and learning. On Wednesdays, all cohorts, MT, HF, which is Thursday and Friday, and remote learning would be all remote learning. Wednesdays, special class students would be in school for in-person teaching and learning. And on Wednesday, our faculty and staff would be in school, planning, live virtual support, and lesson recording and posting. And on Wednesdays, because that will be between student cohorts, we'd be doing an enhanced or deeper cleaning between the cohorts in the evenings. Thursday and Fridays, that's student cohort HF, and that has to do with last names L through Z, and they would be in school, in-person teaching and learning. And of course, our special class students would be in school, in-person teaching and learning. Now, you see last name LZ with a little plus, and the same thing with AK. What that plus means is we recognize that many of our families or households have families and students with different last names. So what we did to try to preserve student cohorting as much as possible was we identified those households with multiple last names and assigned them to one of those two cohorts. You should have gotten a call already from your principal in your building assigning you to such a cohort if that happened. And if you have not, you should reach out to your principal. I'm gonna if you don't mind, I just wanna look at I'll let a bunch of folks in that are in the waiting room. Okay, so students with disabilities. So elementary students in integrated co-teaching, consultant teacher services, or resource program will be following the same hybrid model as their general ed peers. That will be, of course, supported by the special education teacher daily. Similar with secondary students, those students in 15-1 special class, ICT, and resource program will also follow the hybrid model and also be supported by their special education teacher daily. Wednesdays would be full remote learning days for these students. And related services, this is one of the questions, one of the frequent questions that we got from families was what's happening with that. Well, our plan is to schedule those services on those in-person days for those students. So distant learning, what is that going to look like? Students who participate in this option will experience a similar, but not the same learning experience as those participating in the hybrid model. I will tell you it'll be much different than it was when we closed at the end of the last school year, but it will not be the same as in-school teaching. All student cohorts, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and remote learning will have access to the same instructional lessons. And I listed here some similarities to give you that, give you an idea of that. For example, all subjects will utilize Google Classroom platform. All assignments and classwork will be posted in Google Classroom. All lessons will be recorded and posted in Google Classroom. And live virtual support will be available for all students during the week. We're still banging out the details with regard to that, but live virtual support will be available for everyone. The real difference is there'll be no live in-person instruction for remote learning. And if you don't mind, I have to go back to the meeting room and let some people back in. So health and safety. We will practice, educate, and remind students about the new realities of keeping safe. Prevention will be accomplished by following the recommendations of health authorities in the following areas: health checks and screening, healthy hygiene practices, social distancing, personal protective equipment, enclosed face coverings, the management of ill persons, and cleaning and disinfection. Families will be expected to monitor their children for symptoms of COVID-19. Faculty and staff will self-monitor and complete a COVID-19 screening questionnaire before leaving for work each day. And essential visitors will complete a COVID-19 screening questionnaire before entering any building. I've listed the screening questionnaire right there below. And as you can see, the first question is, do you currently have a temperature greater than 100 degrees? Do you have a cough or shortness of breath that began in the last 14 days? In the last 14 days, have you gotten a positive test result of COVID-19? And in the past 14 days, have you been in close contact with someone who either tested positive or developed symptoms? So if you answer yes to any of those, you are to self-quarantine at home for 14 days. In addition to this screening, all individuals, that's faculty, staff, students, and visitors, will have their temperature checked before entering the building. Social distancing. So while in school, students, faculty, and staff, and essential visitors will be asked to maintain a distance of 6 feet from each other. This request will pertain to all classrooms, bathrooms, hallways, common areas, and while on the school bus. Cloth face coverings that completely cover the nose and mouth will be required for all employees, students, and approved essential visitors. These coverings must be worn upon entering the building, in classrooms, bathrooms, hallways, common areas, and while on the school bus. Mask breaks will be included for students throughout the day and may vary based on individual classroom circumstances.
Like you get to take your mask off, I guess.
Oh, I thought he said mask.
If you all could please mute. If you're not muted, that'll be helpful for everyone. So mask breaks. When students are appropriately socially distanced, teachers will provide a 5-minute mask break for every 40 to 45-minute period of instruction. Since individual classroom circumstances may vary, teachers may also provide additional relief from wearing a face covering provided students are appropriately socially distanced. And that piece is in there basically for the concern of those hot days when kids may need an additional break besides the 5-minute. So in addition to classroom mask breaks, students will have relief from wearing the face covering when socially distanced and eating breakfast or lunch. And students who refuse to wear a face covering will be considered insubordinate. So COVID-19 testing. If you're following the news, you may have heard the governor say a couple of items that districts needed to do. One of them was COVID-19 testing. That was a little inaccurate. I believe it was the way it was reported. Students and adults who show signs or symptoms of COVID-19 will be sent home from school. But according to the health department, students and adults sent home for COVID-19 symptoms must have a minimum documentation from a healthcare provider, evaluation, and negative COVID-19 testing and symptom resolution, or COVID-19 positive. If they're COVID-19 positive, a release from isolation before returning to school. The district will assist families and staff with COVID-19 testing as necessary and work closely with the Department of Health in supporting testing. We are not healthcare providers, and we do not do COVID testing. Another item was contact tracing. Suffolk County Department of Health is the local authority responsible for case investigations and contact tracing in Suffolk County, and we will support the district with contact tracing. The district will support case investigations and contact tracing efforts by confirming attendance, sharing schedules and visitor logs, etc. We will not necessarily be doing the contact tracing. That is a function of the health department. And the health department typically completes case investigations within 24 hours of receipt of a positive test result. And as we did last year, the district will continue to notify the learning community when investigations are underway. So facilities, and I need to let a few folks in again, if you don't mind. So physical spaces will be configured and maintained in a way that provides for maximum possible protection from spreading the coronavirus. The district will follow the health guidance related to social distancing and other safety measures. In our classrooms, desks will be spaced at least 6 feet apart in every classroom and facing the same direction. Cafeterias, meal service may be staggered at each school to the extent practical to allow for appropriate social distancing. Students in grades K to 6 will eat meals in their classroom or an alternative space such as outdoors. Students in 7 through 12 will eat breakfast in their classrooms and lunch in the cafeteria or an adjacent open space such as courtyard or outdoors. And in all scenarios, seating will be socially distanced appropriately. In gymnasiums, students will not engage in physical contact activities until further notice. Activities involving individual exercise may be explored, and students participating in aerobic physical activity must maintain a distance of 12 feet between them. Music rooms. Choir, band, orchestra, and other large classes must be reorganized to allow for sufficient social distancing and so that sharing of materials does not occur. For students who are singing or playing wind instruments, a distance of 12 feet between them must be maintained. Hallways in schools may designate certain hallways as one-way or create lanes in hallways using colored tape, floor markings, or directional arrows, depending upon the width of the corridors involved. Lockers and locker rooms, locker use at the middle school and the high school will be suspended until further notice. And the playgrounds may be used by a limited number of students at one time when all safeguards in place. Students will be instructed and reminded to wash hands before and after playground equipment use and maintain appropriate social distancing during playground use. In our bathrooms, one student will be permitted in the bathroom at a time. We will use sign in and sign out logs in the event that contact tracing is needed at any point. Ventilation, this was a pretty big question that did come in. The district plans to ensure sufficient ventilation and fresh air circulation by means of ventilating building spaces with outdoor air to the extent practicable. That means opening windows and doors, and within the parameters, of course, of safety and security needs. Leaving doors open will also preclude the constant touching of doorknobs and handles. Fan motor speed increases where applicable to ensure that the volume flow has been increased to that 15 cubic feet per minute minimum. More frequent maintenance and inspection of air handling systems will occur to mitigate extra strain on our systems. Spaces in which adequate ventilation cannot be achieved simply will not be utilized. Water fountains. So all of our bubbler water fountains will be turned off or X'd out. I'm sure you've been in our buildings and you've seen we've been equipping them with bottle filling stations. Those will remain on. District recently purchased 10 additional stations that are going to be installed shortly. So we believe we will have plenty of bottle filling stations to address the needs in each of the buildings. Social emotional well-being. So our learning community is facing unprecedented challenges as we respond to these challenges. We also offer unprecedented opportunities to envision the renew in the capacity of our schools and communities to be welcoming, supportive, inclusive, and equitable environments. So we recognize many of our students have experienced an extremely stressful, traumatic experience during school closure and will not return to instruction as they left months ago. We also recognize that some of our students have had positive experiences during school closure and had success with remote learning. Social emotional well-being of our students will be a priority during transition back to school and for as long as necessary to appropriately support our student needs. In addition, social emotional needs of our faculty and staff will also be a priority before the return to school and on an ongoing basis. And let me just let a few folks in. Technology and connectivity. So access to computing devices and the internet are essential for educational equity. We certainly found that when we were thrusted into the remote learning environment at the end of the school year. So in reopening our schools, the district is purchasing and assigning a computer device for each student attending our schools in grades kindergarten through 12. These devices will be for learning purposes at school and at home in a distant remote learning setting. And that recognizing that many of our families do not have access to the internet, to the extent practicable, the district is planning to acquire and distribute internet hotspots to families in need, thereby breaking down the barrier of education equity.
If you homeschool, do you?
If you can all please mute. Thank you. Transportation. All parents and guardians are required to ensure their children are not experiencing any signs or symptoms of COVID-19 and do not have a fever of 100 degrees or more prior to boarding the school bus. Students will be required to wear face coverings on the bus and will be social distanced on the bus. Wheelchair school buses will be configured wheelchair placement to ensure social distancing of 6 feet. Our bus drivers, monitors, and attendants will perform a self-assessment similar to our own faculty and staff before reporting to work. And our school bus drivers, monitors, and attendants will also wear a face covering. And of course, we have contact folks with regard to the implementation of our plan. They're deemed safety coordinators. Our district safety coordinator is Mr. Briggs. He is our assistant superintendent for personnel and general administration. He will oversee all coordinators and the plan's implementation. And then at each of our schools, our building principal will be the point people of contact for the plan there. And of course, for student support services, our director of student support services, Ms. Kerry Carson, will be the point person there. So last time at the board meeting, I shared some dates to remember, and I've updated this based on some new dates. So you can mark your calendars, and you don't need to rush for a pen. This PowerPoint presentation will be posted tomorrow on our website for your availability, as will today's meeting, which is being recorded. But just to review these dates to remember, we have scheduled another district-wide virtual parent meeting, which will be for next Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. A letter will be going out to that effect. The meeting will be quite similar to this evening, but I will tell you that any additional information that we have will be shared at that meeting as well. We are also going to do virtual parent meetings that are closer to school rather than district-wide. So we're going to do a meeting for pre-K through 5, and then a meeting for grade 6
Just
through
throw it in
12.
a toaster oven for like
Those
2
meetings
minutes.
will be on August 20th. And then I know many folks are interested or considering a remote learning environment. What we are going to do later this week is I will be getting a letter out, and that letter will include a survey. Actually, it'll include 2 surveys. One survey to let us know if you are considering remote or hybrid, and the other survey will be whether or not you are considering driving or taking the bus to school. I think I mentioned earlier the parent survey, which by the way is available on our website, indicated that about 20% of our families did not intend to send their kids back to school, while about 17% of our families weren't sure. Of those folks that were coming to school, about 40% of them said they weren't taking the bus and that they were driving. So the district is going to try to get a handle on that number so we can better plan our classroom and also our transportation needs. So that survey is going to go out this week, but it is not due until the end of next week, Friday the 21st, because at that time you have had this meeting this evening. You will be able to attend the Tuesday, the 18th meeting with me again, and you will have the opportunity to speak to and meet with the buildings at elementary or secondary, where you will get some additional detail with regard to our plan moving forward. And just by way of announcement, teacher assignments are going to be posted on the portal this school year. They will be available on Wednesday, the 26th. Recognizing that we are starting school on Tuesday, the 8th, and that would be for the cohort MT. Cohorts RL and HF will not have assigned Chromebooks. So we are going to give you a date later on with regard to when those Chromebooks can be picked up, so you have that availability on that first day of school. And that all of that information, again, will be coming. And I do have a few other questions that I don't think I answered, but I do want to hit on before I do take some questions from you all. So one of the questions were, can cohorts be switched? And unfortunately, they cannot. We have had many requests to do that. And quite frankly, we did a lot of work to try to find that sweet spot to where half the kids were, so we can determine what the cohorts were. And if we were to start making switches, that would just throw everything way out of balance. So unfortunately, we're gonna stick to where your cohort assignment is, and they cannot be switched. Question came up with regard to our ELL students and possible 5 days of week instruction. We did consider and think about the ELL students in terms of that, as we did with the special education students, but we felt that we would first open up and see what our situation is with regard to students in the classroom, how many kids are there, and how we may be able to handle it. So sort of a soft opening, so to speak. So once we get in and see how things are, we can see if we can bring in additional groups of students, and the L's would be one of them. question in terms of number of students you can expect in a classroom, that number would vary. It would depend upon the size of the classroom and, of course, how many families choose to keep their kids home. I'm guessing that those numbers will vary anywhere from 8 to 12 in a classroom, but I rest assured that students will be appropriately socially distanced, and it would not exceed the number that would not allow us to do that in any classroom. In and out of remote from hybrid, so some parents had asked, can I start with hybrid and come in, go into remote, and can I start with remote and go into hybrid? Yes, you can. However, moving from remote to hybrid is going to take some planning. So we're indicating that you need to do that on a quarterly basis at the secondary level or a trimesterly basis on the elementary level. Moving from hybrid to remote is a lot easier because systems will in place and we don't have to plan for someone in the extra space. But coming back to a hybrid, you would need to let us know and do it on a quarterly and semesterly basis. One parent asked if a face shield could be used instead of a mask. Unfortunately, no. The guidelines are pretty clear. You can use a face mask and a shield, but not one or the other. So you do know we are providing all of our faculty a face shield for them to do smaller group work if they need to or wish to feel more comfortable with the face shield. So one will be available in every classroom. And all faculty and staff have been assigned or will be assigned to cloth face coverings for their own use. Enhanced cleaning. So our cleaning generally, at least the enhanced cleaning will definitely happen in the evenings when our crews are in. There will be, I say enhanced because custodians will be moving throughout the day, cleaning items such as doorknobs and frequently touched items at the secondary level. In the cafeteria, all the tables will be wiped down in between sessions. But I don't want you to think that in between classes at the secondary, custodians will be in washing desks, because that we don't have the manpower for that, and that's not going to happen. But in each of our classrooms, there will be materials that were, for the lack of a better word, they were calling a COVID bin. And it's going to have PPE and disinfectant and hand sanitizer and everything that's needed in there. And certainly secondary students will be asked or requested to clean their space before they sit down. I mean, I think we find that happens in health clubs now. When you could go to a health club, you clean the equipment before you get on and you clean the equipment before you get off. And I think we're going to be looking at the same thing in the secondary level for our desks. BOCES program, 5 days a week. So the OC-ED program, BOCES announced that they're going to be able to handle kids 5 days a week. That puts us in a little bit of a predicament because many of our kids are going to be in the hybrid model and not 5 days a week. So obviously we're going to allow it. It's going to be a little bit of a challenge for us with transportation, but we're going to make that happen with regard to our hybrid kids that are also in the BOCES program. There'll probably be regional stops where they're picked up and dropped off on those days that they're not in, and those details still need to be worked out down the road. Before and after care. So for the last couple of years, we have been offering before and after care for our elementary families. Unfortunately, we're not going to offer that this school year. We are following recommendations by local health officials to cohort wherever possible. We felt that that was going to jeopardize our cohorting model, in that a bunch of kids are going to be together that are in different cohorts. And God forbid if someone was ill or somebody in the family was ill in one of those cohorts, it could affect several cohorts.
Hi, my name is Angie. When are we going to school?
We are, We are not going to be doing the extended care. We are exploring childcare with the YMCA. More details of that is going to come out later, but we are looking at that, and as YMCA has expressed an interest in offering that program. Question about parent meetings, PTA, SDM meetings, etc. Most of our meetings are going to be virtual this year. I do guess that there may be some that will need to be in person, and they would be, but we are going to look to do as much virtual as we can this school year with regard to meetings. Twins. So many families have twins at the lower levels, and my understanding is they've always liked to keep their twins separate. You should have heard by now that we are putting twins together in the same classroom. We're doing that simply, again, to manage the cohorting piece. So twins, just like households, we're trying to keep them together, so twins will be assigned in the same classroom. More detailed schedules will follow. Many asked, what is this going to look like? How's the day going to look like? I can't tell you exactly how the day is going to look like right now. I can tell you I've seen some real promising drafts that I think that you as parents will be very happy with, both at the elementary and the secondary level. But I don't want to try to share something that I can't promise I can deliver to you. But more detailed schedules will follow, whether it's DL instruction. I know a question came about grading, and obviously grading is going to need to be revisited. It's not going to be like we left. It's probably going to be very much closer to the traditional grading that we did have. But again, those are items that we are going to revisit and share with you as we move forward. And then I also want to just let you know that our plan continues to be updated. Many of the questions that were asked are in the plan. I know it's a little bit of a lengthy document, but it is pretty comprehensive and it does provide some really good guidance for you. So I suggest, if you haven't already, to take a look at it. And take a look at it once a week. I'll be quite honest with you. I'm sharing information with you right now that's not on the plan, but will be there tomorrow. So we're tying up some other loose ends. We're going to get it into the plan, and we're going to upload it on the site. I don't know if you have been following the governor. He's given some directives to the districts, and those things need to be posted by the end of the week. We will be posting them by the end of the week. And the 3 items, so you know, if you don't know, are what's remote learning going to look like, the testing piece, the COVID testing piece, and contact tracing. So he wants us to not only have that in our plan, but to pull it out in a separate document so it's easy for parents to see, which we will do. The governor has also required districts to have these parent meetings. I'm pretty happy about that because, quite frankly, we've been doing it already, right? The ones that I did already don't count, though, because he said everything's got to happen between August 7th and the 21st. So we're going to have our 3 meetings. This first one is tonight. The next one will be Tuesday, and then Thursday will be the final 3rd meeting that will be with the parents at the secondary and the elementary level. I plan to meet with the faculty next week to share more details with them at that time. And that's all I have, folks. I don't know, like I said, I know I didn't answer every question. Some I couldn't, but I promise I will be able to answer them later. What we are going to do is we're going to put together a frequently asked question document to try to address those and put them up on the web so you have them, and so everyone has the same information and are able to look at that. But I would be happy to take a couple of questions.
Sorry, Dr. Gianni, I just have one question. Who will I call to notify that my child will not be returning to school? And how do I get her books for classes?
Yeah, okay, so as I indicated earlier, a letter's going to come home today or this week, and it is going to be a survey on it. All you need to do is indicate on that survey that you want to do remote learning, and then you will be reached out to by the principal. Okay, and we are
Okay,
planning to distribute the Chromebooks before school starts. That date's
okay, and then just one other question for you, apologize. She is in band, and how will she be practicing from home on remote learning with band?
And that is another one that I will allow to be questioned, that'll be answered later. I mean, we do believe
Okay.
we can do practicing remotely, but the details of that will be yet to be determined.
Why can't we do live teaching?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Why can't the teachers teach live when the kids are at home if you choose the hybrid?
Well, because to do that there's a couple of items. First of all, the district doesn't have the broadband to stream every single classroom out to be able to do that. The other item is that you know, you only have so many teachers, right? And they have kids in front of them. So they can't simply just stream a lesson out. We can't simply stream into the classroom and be able to show it.
How are all the other districts doing it?
Well, quite frankly, I don't think the other districts are doing it. There may be some that are doing streaming. I don't want to mention any district names, but I am aware of many districts that are saying they're doing it and hoping teachers will do it. I don't want to tell you something that I can't deliver to you. And streaming a classroom is not one of them right now.
Wait, Dr. Gianni, about Eastern Suffolk BOCES and the technical students that are going to the school. We have we have morning students and afternoon students. The afternoon students, we were told before COVID-19 even happened, because my daughter is one of them, that they would not get into the school, high school in time to reach the regular bus schedule, that they would have to get on the extracurricular bus, that's a late bus. Since there's no extracurriculars happening this year, how are you and the bus transportation handling that there will be kids coming back to the school district in high school after the main bus if there's no extracurricular bus happening?
Who told you there weren't an extracurricular bus happening? And I thought I did just mention that we recognize that those are going to be challenges, but we are going to address those transportation challenges.
Well, do you have extracurricular buses happening if there's no extracurriculars?
Well, we have extracurricular buses funded, but they're not necessarily happening when we're going to have the extracurricular.
Okay, so if I have a child that goes in the PM in the afternoon, but she's only going to be going 2 days a week, but BOCES is happening 5 days a week, do I have to drive her for those 3 days to the high school?
No, you don't, Mrs. Arman. I mean, and as I mentioned earlier, that we recognize that BOCES is 5 days a week, and we are going to be providing transportation for those youngsters, and it would probably be in the form of regional stops and whatnot, but those details have not been worked out.
And so in the past, will we be allowed, if we choose to drop our children off to BOCES without going through public school transportation? Because that was not allowed before. Will it be allowed now?
Well, that's going to be a BOCES question. I don't know. I mean, I don't have a problem with it, but I think that's a BOCES issue.
I have a question.
We will be providing the transportation to it. Whether BOCES allows you to drive your kids will be a BOCES answer.
I have a question. How come
Thank you.
children with 5 days inclusion would not be considered a special ed? My son's got a learning disability that
Was in an inclusion
was
class.
an inclusion class that really was supposed to be in the 15-1, but we got talked out of it twice. And now he's so far behind and he's required. How are we going to fix this?
Listen, I understand your frustration. It's not as simple as we can just let everyone in. I think once that,
Asking for
as I said, once we do get our students in and we're
We're
able.
we're not asking for everyone. We're saying the kids with special needs. You know, we're not saying everybody. There are a lot of children that have special needs that this type of remote learning, they're so far behind that this new system here, I mean, it's the emotional toll that it's taken on him because he's not able to do the work. I can't teach him. I'm not a teacher.
Especially special education.
Especially he's got
teacher.
dyslexia amongst other things, and it's just not something that we're prepared. We're not capable of doing. It's not we don't want to. We're not capable of it.
I do understand your frustration, and it was considered. And as I said earlier, we are looking at bringing more kids back down the road. Inclusion is one of those groups.
You're talking about.
Support
I do have a question as well.
I'm sorry. I understand you all have questions, but if you would allow me to finish my response, then we could
Sure.
take the question. Okay, we do recognize that our inclusion kids are struggling just as many of our kids are. Our Ls are struggling as well. We put together a program that we think is going to address the needs of social distancing. And then once we do get in and back to school, we will assess the needs as kids learn social distancing and look to bring additional kids back in to the school building. I do recognize your frustration, and I know inclusion kids are struggling. I know Ls are struggling. I know Gen Ed kids are struggling. We know all of these things, and it would be my wish to bring everyone back.
It's 20 hours.
Okay, but unfortunately, it's difficult, if not impossible, to bring kids back and abide by the social distancing guidelines that we have in our buildings.
Okay, so now I have my question. My son is actually in a 15-1, which would allow for social distancing, but for some reason, your 15-1 on secondary level are not going to be permitted to come for 5 days. I don't understand what that's about.
Yeah, that's because your child may follow a 15-1-1 with one period, but in other periods are inclusion and are going to day to day. So
No, he's full-time 15-1, and the only type of inclusion thing would be like gym, which are the, regular.
Why don't you reach out to the principal tomorrow, because maybe yours is not what you think it is.
Okay, because then your paperwork that came out, page 1 through 20, made it sound like he was going back to school. And when I got to page 21, it was added in that secondary students for 15-1 are going to follow the regular general ed model of going to school 2 days and home instruction for the other 3.
I don't know your child's exact assignment, and I'd rather not talk about it with everyone. You can reach out to me personally tomorrow or reach out to the principal.
Will there be a separate meeting for pre-kindergarten as far as how their structure is going to be? Because clearly they can't hybrid learn.
Yeah, pre-kindergarten is obviously not hybrid. Well, they are hybrid learning, but what we are looking at for pre-K right now is an alternate week schedule, because on Wednesday we're obviously not doing remote pre-K, right? So we're now considering so the Monday, Tuesday, 1 week would be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then the next week it would be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So it'd be basically 2.5 weeks. So on that Wednesday, no remote for pre-K, but they'll be in person every other week. So we're looking at that right now.
So there'll be 3 days, 3 days in and 3 days in alternating days, or?
It comes out to like 2.5 days a week, right? 1 week it's 3 days,
Okay.
the next week it's 2 days, 3 days, 2 days, like that.
Okay.
But we're looking at that right now, man. We actually just started talking about that today.
Question.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
So will the teachers be recording as they teach the lesson to one of the cohorts? And when will they be posting the lessons for the cohort that's being
Mine's okay.
Yeah, so that's the plan, but I can't give you the details. The plan is to record and post everything. So all cohorts have the same instructional information. And also the plan is to have live support for everyone, right? Regardless of what cohort you're in. But again, those details will be forthcoming.
Question.
Dr. Gianni.
Dr. Gianni, I have a question. Will all the learning and from either in school or at home be based on a Chromebook? So students won't have to take home like a knapsack full of stuff?
Yeah, we're trying to put everything into Google Classroom, right? We're trying to avoid touching anything. So we're trying to make sure everything is in Google Classroom. And
I have a question, Dr. Gianni. On the 2 days the students are going to be there, one of the concerns I have is in those 2 days, are they going to be bogged down with things like library and art and gym? I mean, I would prefer them to be learning and not, things like gym and library. Are they going to start jamming all that into the 2 days where they barely get any time with the teachers?
well, believe it or not, physical education is a requirement, and it was made clear to us by the state. But the way the schedules will work
They could
out,
distant learn gym. We could distant learn gym.
the way the schedule will be worked out is that one of the days would be in physical education, and the other day would be virtual. So it'll be separated. And again, those details are still being worked out. Our focus at the elementary level is going to be on literacy and math. And you'll see that when you see that schedule worked out very soon.
Hi, I have a first grader with 2.5 hours of services, and I think you said that they'll be pulled out during the day. Has there been a consideration to offer those after school? So if he's only there 2 days a week, I'm concerned about him being pulled out an hour and a half a day.
No, there has not been consideration to pull out and do at the end of the school day.
I have a question.
Many of the support things can be done virtually, and also we are looking at doing those things
Didn't work last year.
when the kids are remote learning.
I have a question about the dual language. Since my daughter is in the program, they're gonna be in dual language. It's a lot of work for them. So I can remove from the program, or she's still gonna do the dual program.
Yeah, so dual language is another one of those items that we need to take a deeper dive in looking at, and in terms of what it will look like. I would not recommend that you pull the child out of dual language. I don't know what grade he or she is in at this time, but I would stay with it and let us see how that program is going to be delivered. I know it's a lot of work in both languages, particularly in a hybrid schedule, but we do have that on our radar, and we do have concerns about that as well.
I'm sorry, Dr. Gianni.
About the dual language program, because my child was going into the 2nd grade in the dual language program. Last year, it was not good. I cannot teach my child Spanish at home. I do have a husband that does speak a little Spanish, and we have tried our best. But if we are going to be doing remote, my suggestion for it is that the teacher does the lessons on the hybrid days for those children as well, because we cannot do that at home again. It was difficult for them to do, and they are falling behind. Also on the note of 5 days a week.
I just want to comment, listen, I recognize the end of last school year was not what it should have been.
Right.
And I also have heard our parents loud and clear that you are looking for structure and live instruction and with support. And we are addressing those things, and I am going to be very transparent in terms of what we can offer and what we will offer. And
Hi, Dr.
We're going to find out when that will be happening.
And I promise you that what we deliver this school year is going to be quite different than what happened at the end of last school year.
And Mr. Gianni, when will we find out when we will be getting like the courses for online, so that this way we can follow along?
I don't understand the courses online. What do you mean by that?
If whatever it is that you're going to be doing through virtual teaching, when will you find out when you'll be scheduling that maybe perhaps Monday through Friday at specific times? When would we find that information out?
So when someone is signed up, if you sign your child up for remote teaching and learning, the way it is designed right now is you will be taking part in all the lessons, but they will be recorded. So you will have the same instructional material that the kids have in the classroom. the program is set up in a way, so if in fact we all go to remote, all the kids are in the same position, and say we all come back to school, everybody is in the same position. We're looking to do Google Meets and connections with all the children, regardless where you are in the mornings, so they can have that social emotional connection. And then you would have access to the work that is in Google Classroom. And then
Okay.
you'll also have virtual support throughout the week. Those details still need to be worked out, and we are going to share them with you. I'm hoping we'll have that by next week. Before you have to make that decision. But I also want to be honest with you. The remote option is not going to be the same as the hybrid, because you're not going to have a teacher in front of you. I wish that we could stream. We're not there yet. I believe that in some instances we will be able to stream, and it will happen. And I promise you that we are working to get there, but I don't want to tell you it's going to happen if it's not.
Hey, Dr. Gianni, I have a very important question about remote learning. As far as structure, you keep touching on it, which is great, but these kids need a schedule that's going to be accurate for remote learning. They can't sign on at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and think that they're going to get the same type of education. So is there going to be a structured schedule where these kids have to do like what they do in the normal school day? 9 to 10 or whatever the schedule is, with a lunch and so-called recess, because basically it's going to be remote learning all over again like we did, only basically it seems like it's just going to be remote learning in the building at the same level too.
That's not going to work though if the parent work. If I work, I won't be able to do that for my kid.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
You're going to see a schedule. You're going to see a structure. We heard the parents loud and clear. They wanted
quick question, Dr. Gianni. If both parents work, and I have a kindergartner, obviously kindergartners can't read yet. The remote portion of the hybrid is going to be very difficult as it is. If we're both working and we're hiring care, I don't see how it's going to be possible for him to be on at an exact time. Although structure, I do seem it's very important to have all of that structure, which is why I kind of feel K-5 should be 5 days a week. But what's going to be done with that if our child cannot get on at the exact time? And are there going to be like a live webinars since we can't do the streaming? Would there be a way of doing live teaching through webinars?
Over the summer, they did excellent stuff with the kids. My son was in a reading program and he met one-on-one. It was a small group with the reading teacher, and it was the most amazing experience I think that I've seen since before March, because my special education kid that's in an inclusion class did not learn a thing. He was not taught anything. As of March moving forward, I performed Zoom services for my students all day long, and he did basically nothing online. And
I agree.
I'm not saying I'm faulting the teachers, but I think that there is a way for the district to figure this out. And I think the teachers need to be given the opportunity to learn how that they can not only teach in small groups, but present online. They need to teach, and that's what they're there for. They need to teach. And I'm not faulting the teachers. I'm not faulting one person, but I think the district needs to be able to figure this out. There is a way to do it. We have to figure it out.
I agree.
100%.
Dr. Gianni, can you speak about why K-5 can't be 5 days rather than the 2?
Because our committees that looked at the social distancing in these schools did not feel that we could do that. And I will be quite honest with you, the committees came back suggesting remote learning.
But there are other districts that are larger than South Country that are prioritizing K-5 students and having them 5 days a week. Aren't our class sizes relatively small already? And then if we have students who are choosing, or families who are choosing remote learning, then the class sizes would be even smaller. So I think a lot of people are having a hard time understanding why K-5 can't be 5 days a week.
Well, one of you mentioned small class sizes, and you're right. We have had small class sizes, But we've also addressed that in this budget, and we've reduced 3 sections to try to increase those class sizes. So the remarkably small class sizes you have seen in the past were not planned for this year. Secondly, every district has different situations, right? Many districts have extra buildings. I'll give you an example. Shoreham Reading River has an extra building. So it was easy for them to spread people out and do that. We don't have that kind of space.
Well,
We're rather tight for space when it comes to that. And we simply did not feel we can get everybody in. And again, I want to tell you that different than most districts, I think what's nice about our plan is that it can pivot on a dime, right? So we can go either way. If we need to go all remote, or say for example, metrics go down, a vaccine comes in and everybody can come back, we're all back. Many districts plan can't do that. Those districts, when they're ready to come back, are probably going to have to break for a few days to be able to organize to come back. We're not going to have to do that. We're going to just come back or go out in whatever way we need to do it. And to speak about the parents out or families that choose remote, yes, you're right. If a lot of people choose remote, that class will be smaller. But remember, I have to keep the space available for when those kids want to come back. So that's why when we open, you will be able to look at what it looks like.
Remote.
We can make adjustments and possibly bring additional kids back after once we open. Once kids learn social distancing, once we see maybe we can bring more kids back, our plan is set up to be able to phase in to more kids.
Hi, Dr. Gianni. I have a question.
I'm sorry, I have a question. Not once have I heard, these are kids and they're like sponges. They are learning. Not once I hear, why don't we send the kids to school even odd weeks? Because it's like going to work Thursday, Friday. You're basically, you're not absorbing anything. So why don't they go to school all 1 week and then remote learn 1 week? Because really,
that makes sense.
2 days, and what they're gaining at home. You know they're not doing the amount of work that they would do in school with a teacher watching. And me and my wife, we're not teachers, and I'm not going to sit here. It's not my job. That's why you're educators. You learn to do this.
We did look at the 1 week on, 1 week off, and felt that it was not in the best interest of kids to do that. And that also it would be more difficult for families in terms of childcare in doing so.
Okay, what about?
We did look at the 1 week on.
Just one quick question. What's the maximum temperature that the room can handle? Like when you start sending the kids to school in September, I know those rooms can get pretty hot, and 15 CFM is a joke of air movement. What's the temperature in the room where you would say, listen, we got to get out of this classroom?
I haven't considered that in terms of, obviously on heat conditions, we'd have to worry about that. We're going to be promoting teachers using outdoor spaces as much as possible. But I don't have a maximum temperature to give you right now.
Dr. Gianni, I have a question. My name is Nicole. I'm a new incoming kindergarten parent, sending my only son to Vern Kritz this fall. We haven't really had any information regarding kindergarten screening, orientation, anything like that. I know that was supposed to happen back in May. So we don't really have access to the portal, so we can't get their assignments. I've emailed the principal at Vern Kritz, haven't heard back yet. It's only been about a day or so. Just curious what the plan is for the incoming kindergartners as far as screening, placement, and how to get access to the portal so we can get any information we need.
Screening, all our screenings have been delayed as a result of COVID, so we have additional time to be able to do those. Those dates will be forthcoming. In terms of orientation, we're planning orientation virtually for kindergarten and also the other grade levels such as 6th grade, 9th grade. You may have already heard if you're a parent of one of those programs. In terms of the portal, there's got to be a date for opening on that. I will need to look at that and make sure we reach out to all kindergarten families.
Okay, we kind of feel like the forgotten group I'm getting a lot of my information from Facebook and parent groups, so just to stay in the loop.
If you have difficulty getting through the school, feel free to call my office and I'll make sure that we get you any of those answers that you might have.
Okay,
So,
thank you for your
Dr.
patience tonight.
Dr. Gianni, I just want to say that on Friday, last Friday, Governor Cuomo's press conference on the phone, he kind of put a curveball to all of our districts when he said that he wanted to have every district put up a testing, screening, and contract tracing procedure, which was not, as I understand, originally part of the issue. So I'm just asking, do you think that Cuomo is trying to make it difficult for the school districts to really be able to do all of that, so that you may not be able to open 5 days a week or 2 days a week, but only be able to do virtual learning because the governor has given you this curveball at the last minute to talk about those 3 specific things, which are a lot of time and money, contract tracing, testing, even though he said you don't have to test in the schools, but give direction where you have to go get that testing done and how, at what time you have to get that testing done. Like, I'm concerned because I feel like the governor has given us a curveball in our districts that he didn't do that before until last Friday to make it more difficult for us to open up. And I just want to know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I'm going to be careful. I'm sharing my thoughts with you. I will tell you that I think the governor's been throwing curveballs all summer to districts with regard to reopening, whether it's lack of guidance, insufficient guidance, or change of guidance. And then, of course, what you mentioned yesterday. Today, I got notice from the Department of Health that said very clearly that schools are not involved in COVID testing or contact tracing. So the governor says a lot of stuff and later has to walk it back. And unfortunately, it caused a lot of heartache and trouble for our districts in opening up. I don't know if the governor has a plan moving forward, but I do know he is making it difficult for us and other districts in regard to reopening plans.
Let me ask you a question. What does the bar need to be at for the schools to open 5 days? In other words, the metrics are so low right now.
No, it's not a bar in terms of that. So the governor has said if it's at a rate below the 9%, I think we're 1%, schools can open, right? But on top of that, you got to do a number of things to be able to open. Social distancing is one of them. And what I'm sharing with you is that we believe we cannot open with everyone here and properly social distance as required by the governor. And
but what would need to change? Is my point. My question is, what would need to change from now for you to consider?
Social distancing guidelines lifted. I think that I don't think you're going to see that until there's a vaccine, and mask relief is done. I just don't see it changing. It has nothing to do with the metric. It has to do with social distancing.
Dr. Gianni, I apologize. Is there going to be, I didn't really, I guess, get the answer to the question before was, with different schedules and everything on the remote days, are we going to be able to go on and do that when we can, if both parents are working? Because I'm not so sure that, my son's going into kindergarten. I'm not so sure he's going to necessarily be able to get on at a certain time.
Yeah, so the remote option, all the lessons will be recorded and posted. What you won't.
This would be the hybrid. It would be the hybrid, but on the remote days.
Yeah, same thing. So on the days that you're remote learning, whether you're remote 5 days or the 3 days off the hybrid, everything is going to be recorded and posted. You will be able to access those any times. What you're not going to be able to get outside of the school day is the live support that's going to be provided.
Okay. And is there any care before and after care at all for the day he is going or anything like that right now, or no?
No, there's no before and after the care. We are looking into childcare with the YMCA, a Patchogue, and more information on that is going to be following.
Dr. Gianni, can I just ask you one question? Do you think, and I'm actually a Democrat, I'm a liberal Democrat, but I want to ask you, do you think that Governor Cuomo is trying to make it difficult for the school districts to open based on the requirements that he's asking, on top of the fact that we do not have the amount of funding that we need to make those requirements happen in our district? So my concern is that this has become political, and Governor Cuomo comes in at the last minute to say that we need to have the school district talk about testing, tracing, and other issues that I don't know if we have the funding for. So my question to you is, do you think that based on the new guidelines from the governor, is it possible that our school district will not be able to open in person based on the new guidelines?
He already answered this.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I don't think that we should.
No, he didn't. He didn't answer that. He did not.
I think we need to stay
No,
focused
but it was difficult. I'm just saying that governor is making it difficult for the
Answer this.
Again, Mrs. Armour, I don't know what the governor is trying to do. I can just tell you that some of the directors are making things difficult. I don't know what the governor is trying to do. But I also want to tell you, even with the requirements that he said, we're going to be able to open under the model I suggested. Contact tracing, COVID testing, that doesn't bother me at all. It's a requirement, but it's also a job of the health department. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that's a non-issue for me in the district.
Dr. Gianni, can I just ask a question in regards to the fact that we're going to try YMCA as like aftercare, before care, days off for remote care? How is that considered social distancing? If they're in a classroom 5 days a week with the same children, then you know that it's the same person that they're contacting. Now you're taking them 3 days a week and putting them into a different facility with children that could be coming from other districts as well. I work in the medical field. I've been involved in this whole entire COVID thing. I am in a room. I am in a room with the same people all day long. We are not to be transferring around, going to different places in the hospital to contaminate other areas. So us going from 5 days a week, 3 days a week, and going to one place and 2 days to another, you're now exposing children to more places. So I just am not understanding how that is social distancing.
Well, again, ma'am, I'm sorry. I'm not requiring you to do it. And that's one reason why we're not doing the before and after care, because it kind of flies in the face of cohorting. But we do recognize families need to find childcare, so we're going to try to see if we can help with that. That's not a requirement. That would be your choice to do that. And yes, if a child did attend childcare and got sick and came into our buildings, it would be problematic for us. It would be, but it's not something we are promoting to do.
Dr. Gianni, what happens if a child is sent home and told they have to quarantine for 14 days? Say they have a fever, I don't know, they have a ear infection, whatever it may be. It turns out to be nothing to do with COVID. I know they have a fever, they're supposed to stay home for 14 days, whatever the time frame is. How is their learning handled if they go in 2 days a week? What happens then?
So if you get sent home for consistent symptoms of COVID, you can't come back until you have clearance from your doctor. You're gonna have to go to the doctor. And if you get that clearance, and I think I did mention it earlier this evening, you'll be able to come back. If you're COVID positive, you're gonna have to quarantine for 14 days.
Yes, but what happens during that 14 days? Because the reality is everyone's coming together. It could happen where somebody does get the COVID virus and they do have to stay home for those 14. So what happens those 2 days a week where they were initially supposed to go in?
You would be able to access remotely, just as if you were out. Well, if you were a 5-dayer, you would be able to access. Because again, remember the beauty of the plan. I know it's not a beautiful plan, But the beauty of the plan is that everyone will have the same information.
Dr. Gianni, what about the children? What about the children that show up to school? I mean, I'm doing remote learning, so it doesn't really affect me, but what about the children that show up to school that are have ear infections that the parents don't know or whatever, and then they spike a fever or something like that? Are they going to be put into the quarantine COVID room? Meanwhile, they may not even have COVID. They might just be a typical kid having a regular stomach virus or a regular ear infection, and we just don't know because there's no doctor to say this is an ear infection versus COVID, for example.
Well,
So that would be, giving those kids exposure to COVID. Meanwhile, they don't really have COVID.
Well, again, if students or adults exhibit symptoms of COVID-19, they're going to be sent to the isolation room, and they're going to be sent home. And they're going to need to be able to re-enter by a clearance from their doctor, regardless, student or adult.
Dr. Gianni, Joshua Warshaw here. I have a question branching off of that. If a student is found to be positive in school, what will they be doing with the rest of the class? Will the rest of the class have to quarantine? How will the school be notifying us? How will this work?
Yeah, we will notify you, and any COVID positive case that comes up, we're told we're going to be notified by the health department. Certainly, we hope that families would notify us. If, I think in the I know in the document, you will see a definition of close contact. We will need to do that contact tracing to determine whether or not the class closes, or if even other classes closes and quarantines for 5 days.
Okay, so they will do the contact. They will get into the contact tracing when that happens.
We will support the health department in their efforts, and we will be collecting information in school as well.
Very good.
We're need to trace where the kid or the adult was and who they were in contact with in school.
Very good. Thank you.
Dr. Gianni, I'd like to thank you for your help. I wonder whether this solution had been considered. Since high school students do not need to be supervised the way younger children do, did you ever consider putting the entire high school on remote learning and opening up the high school building to the elementary and middle school?
Excellent.
That way each teacher in the high school could then Zoom directly with their individual classes, and the high school students could follow their schedule and have learning every day remotely. Was this considered at all?
The high school kids experience, no?
That won't work for special education.
Yeah, that was not considered. That was not.
Could it be considered? Could it be considered you would have an entire building available to the younger students who do need to be in school 5 days a week in person with teachers? I believe that most of the high school students could handle remote learning directly with their teachers, and each teacher could teach from home on Zoom, just as like you've accommodated 500 parents tonight very well on Zoom. I'd just like to put that in as a suggestion to consider. We have to be creative. We have to be creative and inventive and try to work for everyone's good.
I agree.
Anyway, that's my suggestion, and I'd like to just throw it out there to the community and to the superintendent and the Board of Education.
It definitely doesn't benefit the high schoolers. I mean, they want to go to school as well.
But they don't need that they don't need the supervision that or perhaps we could do some sort of social thing with them. I'm just saying it as brainstorming. We're all just trying to brainstorm and come up with some
definitely is a good suggestion.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So if there are no other questions, I think I'm going to wrap it up. Hopefully by next Tuesday.
Gianni, I do have a
Dr. Gianni, can I ask just one quick question, please?
Mr. Gianni, regarding children with asthma, what is the protocol when they have to wear a mask in school and the school is humid and hot? What can we do with these children who are sent constantly to the nurse's office due to them having asthma would they interpret this as a breathing disorder?
I don't think so. I mean, one of the things that we have written in there will be based on conditions of the classroom. So on those humid and hot days, teachers would be providing additional mask breaks in the classroom for students.
Now, having those mask breaks, isn't that taking a chance as well? Because there are children who don't show symptoms, who are not symptomatic and still are carriers. Now, as all the parents here know, they keep saying that children are not immune to this, but then again, you have 109 children who are hospitalized, intubated, and still sick and dying. You have a few children dying. Might not be in New York, but it's in other states. Can we consider that that might happen in our community one day? Because we're opening too fast as it is. Everybody wants remote learning, and some people want children to have hybrid, but then again, no one is thinking about these mask breaks. You don't know if children are symptomatic. You don't know if they have the virus. There's children that won't show symptoms, but then again, they do have it. Now, there are parents also who have large families. For example, I have a large family. I have 10 members of my family living with me. I have 6 children and 3 adults, including my wife. Now, if one of my children gets sick and come home, that's the whole family getting sick. Not just the family, are we thinking the well-being of the teachers as well? The teachers has families. They can get sick. Have we thought about that? You know, like, has y'all changed your ventilation systems in the school as the government requested malls to do?
Well, I think I did go over the increased ventilations that we will be doing in the school. And if we can't provide those ventilations, we weren't going to use those rooms. I understand your concern. I know many families are not comfortable sending their kids back to school. That's why we're offering the remote option. So if you do not have that comfort, you can keep your kids home. I got to tell you that we were probably one of the few districts that were offering total remote until the governor started talking about it. I think our program that's in place is going to be a really good program, remote learning. It's not going to be nothing like you experienced last school year, but again, it's not going to be in school teaching and learning either. And we certainly recognize the frustrations that you all are having. I hope you recognize we're also having the similar frustrations in terms of opening up. And all we're trying to do is offer the best, safest environment for your children to come to school and learn. And that's what we're trying to do.
And I do commend them, Mr. Gianni, and I know you're taking all the protocols and all the steps and all the safety measures for our children. But the only reason that the governor is making this decision is because the schools are losing their funding if you do not open for the school year. Now, y'all gambling with our children's life. You'd rather have children in school for your school to have funding than making sure our children stay home and be safe with their families, and also teachers. I'm not just talking about my children. I'm talking about every children in the community, every teacher, because they have their family as well. The only reason the school districts are opening is because the governor has pressure to open it, or if not, school districts will lose their funding. And if y'all lose your funding, you have to lay off teachers. And no one wants to get laid off in the pandemic and in this station, this what we have right now. But is it really safe? Really, really safe, knowing what we have been seeing in the news and anything that once you open up schools, do you really have that control of minimizing crowding, social distance, and anything like that? No, you can't control small children, K-5. You can't control small children. They need to be active. They touch everything. They touch their mouth. They will take off that mask. You're going to have teachers, put it on, put that mask. Do you have a procedure that is going to be basically monitoring the monitors? Now, I know you have a board that's basically doing all this, but now on this board, are there parents involved for each grade putting their opinion? because all these parents that are here today are having their own opinion, especially closing down the high school and making more room. That's a great idea. Now, how come you cannot have a panel of parents give their input if their children's life are going to be on the line?
I think
Well,
Dr.
listen,
Gianni was giving you that option of staying home and do remote
Everyone's
learning instead
children's
of.
lives are on the line here.
Exactly.
I want to just say a couple of things, and folks, I really do want to close it up. But in terms of the plan development, I want to reemphasize what I said earlier. You know, we put 5 committees together to look at specific items that we felt were important in terms of reopening our schools and dealing with the safety of our children and our staff. Those committees put recommendations to administration. A draft plan was developed. That draft plan went before 4 board advisory committees. Board advisory committees are made up of every stakeholder in the district, from parents to community members to faculty to CSEA, administration. Everybody is on those stakeholder meetings. And they all moved it forward to the board, who ultimately approved it. So this plan was not developed in a vacuum. A great deal of thought was given to it. And we do believe it is the safest plan for reopening. I hear your frustration. I want to tell you that while you are frustrated with us opening, there are just as many folks frustrated with us not opening it full time. You know, we happen to have a community that's on both sides of the issue. Some don't want to send their kids, and some are wondering why we aren't. You heard that this evening. Why isn't everyone coming?
Dr. Gianni, not some. The majority of parents want their children in school. That's what the results of your survey showed. There are numerous districts.
That is not true.
There are numerous districts around us that are opening for our elementary school kids because they cannot handle remote learning. I heard you say that you looked to other states in your reopening plan. How come you didn't consult with our neighboring districts who were able to do that? They had the same obstacles, spacing obstacles to overcome. That was your reason that we were not able. I'm just looking for a reason why we couldn't open 5 days a week for elementary school students.
I just want to say one thing to Dr. Gianni, who, this is Monique Arman, and me and Dr. Gianni many times are not on the same page at all, which I'm sure he can agree. But I can say one thing. We may not be on the same page of what's going on right now, but I just want to thank you, Dr. Gianni, and the Board of Ed, because I know this is an impossible situation to be in right now. And regardless of what I feel I want my children to do or what other people want their children to do, I just want to point out that you are in really an impossible situation. And I understand that. And I just want to thank you for you and the board trying to figure it out. I'm not saying that I agree with everything that you're doing, but I understand and want to commend you for trying to do the best that you can for the district.
If they provided actual learning online, more parents would opt to stay home.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Arman, and I'm going to just make a quick response to that last comment.
Thank you.
So our neighboring districts are all doing a similar program that we are. William Floyd, Patchogue, Longwood. The only couple of districts that have had a lot of space and were making changes were like Shoreham, Rating River, Comstock, some of the North Shore districts. So our neighbors are doing what we are doing. And we did consult. I speak with Brookhaven cluster superintendents probably 3 times a week. So we all do try to do similar things, but recognizing there are not similar issues in each of the districts. For example, open rooms, open school building. We all can't do what everyone else is doing, and we do what's best that we can for our own district. So I want to thank you all.
I really want to finish up, and I just have one quick question, and it's not, it's a yes or no question. Have any parameters been released about metrics to be reached to go back to 5-day instruction, or we're not there yet?
Again, it's not about the metrics. The metrics do come out of the governor's office, but it's about the social distancing requirement.
Mr. Gianni, as you can see,
And again, folks, listen, I really don't mean to cut you all off.
0.9% of coronavirus. Ain't you a little concerned that the coronavirus is affecting Suffolk County a little bit more than Nassau County? Once again, we're at 55 new cases. We're 1.09% up. Don't you think once we reopen schools, the percentage will go up?
I don't know, sir. Thank you
Then
all.
once again, it goes again to us
Thank you,
gambling.
Dr. Gianni. You did a great job. I appreciate it.
Dr. Gianni.
Our next
It goes to us gambling with our children's lives.
Thank
We're-
you. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Keep your kid
Dr.
home.
Gianni.
Can I get a question in?
Dr. Gianni.